All right, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Fantasy Knuckleballers. It's Rich and myself. It is October 31st, and we are here talking about keeper decisions. And Rich and I both play in a couple keeper leagues, dynasty leagues. We thought we share some advice on what we do for our keeper decisions. And actually, why we're doing this show is because my team in our main league here is my keepers are really poor. At least, maybe not poor is the right word, but they're very. There's a lot of questions on what I could do, and at the end of this, we're going to go through my team and figure out what we can do, and hopefully that'll help you make your keeper decisions for this year. What do you think, Rich?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, I enjoy our league. It's an NL only. It's kind of a keeper contract league where you can only keep a player for a maximum of 4 years. And we have 5 keepers per team. So about 50 players over the NL. I really enjoy the keeper contract format because it still leaves a lot of good players out there. And unlike Dynasty, where if your team is bad, it's going to take several years to be competitive. Where in our league, maybe you take 1 year off and then the following year you're back up there. Or if you make the right deals, you can have a bad keeper list and still come out ahead next year. So
Yeah, and like with most keepers leagues, there's a lot of draft pick trading and so forth. So that the draft picks have to be taken into consideration as well. But I
well,
think
yeah, I think, one of the things I like about our league is, and I really like the keeper format, is really conducive for trading because it really makes trading a lot more exciting because you can have an uneven trade that works out for both teams. You can give up a player that's maybe on the injured list that's going to be a great keeper next year for 2 or 3 players to help you this year, ends up helping both teams. So I really like that kind of format.
yeah, and like I said, those types of leagues are usually the most fun because I think you could turn them around if you know what you're doing and you're pretty savvy with the deals. I think you could probably turn your team around pretty quickly. So those are always the most fun. I joined a dynasty league about 6 years ago, and last year was the first year that I actually won money in that league. So it's taken me a long time to rebuild that team, but I've got a ton of young talent, and um, yeah, that's what you have to do in the dynasty leagues. But the good thing about dynasty leagues, you should be able to win multiple years in a row. So. All right. First thing I at least wanted to throw out there is dynasty versus keeper. You might know all of this, but real quick, I think we already alluded to that. Dynasty, you keep usually the majority, if not all, your team, and the keepers, you keep a smaller number of players each year. In our league, our main league, we keep 5, and there's some rules about what constitutes their keeper team. There's some rules on how many people you can keep and guidelines on the types of players you can keep, but we'll leave that out of the conversation for this. But dynasties are usually much bigger and take much longer to build.
I'm really hoping to find me an NL only dynasty league. Seems like most of the dynasty leagues are set up for, all 30 teams, but
Yeah,
I'm hoping I can find maybe an NL dynasty to join this year.
that would be difficult. That would be more difficult, I should say, because of the players going from AL to NL. Like, what do you do with players that are on the AL that it gets traded to the AL. Since it's a dynasty, I guess you could allow them to stay on the team, but not in an active mode, or you can make them drop those, which is always a decision in NL leagues. But I think it would be a little bit more challenging in dynasty formats because it's designed for such much longer terms.
Yeah, I
But
don't think it has to though, Aaron, because you can use the same rule we use. You can keep that player this year if they get traded out of the league, but then you have to let them go. And then as far as players coming into the league, then that's a fab situation where you got a bid for them and whoever makes the best bid, or if you've got a ranking system, whoever has first pick gets that player.
yeah, and like I said, yeah, it could definitely be done. It would be interesting. I would definitely take part in something like that, at least to see how it plays out. All right, so Rich, I'm really interested in like understanding since you won our league last year, and you have won our league probably 5 of the last 8 years. What do you consider a good keeper?
Okay, for me, there's an age limit. And I might make an exception for like somebody like Max Scherzer, but I don't like keepers over the age of 33 years old. That for me, if you look historically at keepers, are people that have proven to been top 50 performers. It's an exception to the rule of players that are still at the top of their game after the age of 33. And they're usually Hall of Fame type players. Occasionally, Joey Votto dropped off, but then he spiked back up last year. It was a great example of somebody, but he's potentially Hall of Fame player. Max Scherzer's done it consistently for years now. There are players that do it, but it is rare. So for me, there's an age limit. Number two, I'm looking for somebody that has a good health record track. For me, I'm not looking at somebody that's always injured. I think it's very important that your keepers play and accrue at bats and accrue runs, RBIs, and home runs, or strikeouts and innings. For me, that rules out people like Keto Marte. He would not be a keeper for me, even though he's a very good player. Another player that I would not be interested in as a keeper is, say, Clayton Kershaw. Even though Clayton Kershaw's has been an outstanding player over the last couple of years, over the past 2 or 3 years, he's consistently having injuries every year that's limiting his innings or limiting his appearances. So for me, Clayton Kershaw could be a good player, but he's not necessarily a good keeper. I want my keepers on my roster throughout the year and going to perform. I'm looking for guys that accrue at bats. I would rather take, say, somebody that's going to bat in the top 1 through 5 spots and get me 600 at bats than a player that's going to get me 400. So for me, a good keeper is stability and consistency. I'm not looking for somebody that spikes and goes up and down each year. I would rather have somebody that's very consistent year in and year out over maybe the very top end potential. A Francisco Lindor is a great player. I would rather have, say, a Freddie Freeman who's very consistent, or maybe another player along that guideline that's maybe not as up and down.
All right, let's hold up one there. You said you would rather have Francisco Lindor than a Freddie Freeman?
No, I said the opposite. I would rather have a Freddie Freeman than a Francisco Lindor. I'll give you another example. I would not. Corey Seager, great player, deserves to be a keeper. He would not meet my criteria of a good keeper because of injury concerns.
So I will take this opportunity to do a little bit of a rebuttal. So I've read in the past that a player is no more or less likely to be injured in a given year based on previous history. Whether that So at the beginning of every season, if I guess statistically speaking, injuries are random, are completely random, based statistically across the board, and like so supposedly like any player has an equal opportunity to be injured one season to the next, and even with duration. Now, I believe that, but at the same time, I'm there with you, Rich, as far as some players do tend to be snake bit. They they tend to be on the DL or the IL quite frequently every single year. I'll throw out one name that we all love to talk about is Nick Senzel. He's been on the injured list every single year for a month or more since like the second year he's been in the league. Um, is it because he's injury prone, or is it because he's just extremely bad luck? Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts? I guess your thoughts is like he's just injury prone, right?
Yes. I mean, if you look, that doesn't mean he couldn't have a great season next year. I'm just saying, I'm looking at the odds, and to me, somebody like Nelson Lamet would not be somebody I would want to keep, even if he has a great season this next year, because I'm not sure I can depend on him long term. Another player like that, I was just thinking about that, was I'll have to think about it. But yeah, I definitely believe that a prior history of injuries, it means a player is more likely to be injured in the future. And I think there is something to be said for playing time, and there are those players that go out every day. A Dansby Swanson comes to mind, in that he plays a lot of games. Freddie Freeman never misses a start. There is something to be said for those players that go out every day and make every start, or make 150 plus starts a year.
I
And
agree with you. So I guess the one thing that I would throw in there, as a player gets older, the injury risk or the effects of the injuries will greaten. So like players don't recover quite as fast at 33 than they did at 25. So that's one major reason why you not necessarily try to keep players over 33, like you were saying. So I think that's a really good point there.
one last thing I would just add on keepers is, I do read the back of the baseball card. I believe a good keeper a lot of times has a track record of being that top 50 player. Now,
Yeah,
um, you're more likely to do it a second time after you've done it once or twice. You're more likely to do it a third time. There are some exceptions. If you got a player that was a keeper, and I'll throw out a name that happened last year, Max Munson. Max Muncy in 2020 was not a top 50 player. He was in 2019, and I believe he was in 2018. He rebounded in 2021 and became that player again. If you looked at Brian Reynolds, he's another example that we probably all should have jumped on. I don't think anybody really did. 2019 was a breakout year. 2020, he regressed, and then 2021, he showed, he's already shown that he has the talent. He's just proven it again in 2021. So,
just like Joey Votto as well. Like he's proven that he can do it. And granted, he's much older than your average breakout candidate there, but yeah, I yes, I agree with you. I along that same vein as well. So track record for veterans players been in the league for several years, but also, in my opinion, pedigrees. So that's not 100% set in stone, but if a player is highly ranked in the minors and in scouting, then the chances are of them becoming a superstar in the major leagues is um, much more likely. Granted, there's exceptions to that, but I would say um, over 50% of the superstars were players with high pedigrees in the minors and in during scouting.
I think you're right there, especially when it comes to hitters. But I've almost come full circle when it comes to pitchers.
Oh yeah,
And I used to believe those guys that come up in the minors, they just blow people away, and then next thing they're superstars. Well, if you look at the last couple of years, you either have guys, and I'll give you a perfect example, Trevor Rogers. Was he ever on the top 100? I know he was a first round draft pick. I'm not sure he was ever a top 100 prospect. And then all of a sudden he blew up.
yeah. I don't
Another
think.
Logan Webb, another example.
Yeah,
He's a guy that I'm not going to say he wasn't a prospect, but he wasn't a highly ranked prospect. And then he never had great stats in the minors. And then all of a sudden he put it together. And he's a really great pitcher. So my one caveat to that are pitchers can bust on the scene late and show. Another guy is your guy that you're thinking about keeping, Ranger Suarez. When have you
yeah,
heard about Ranger Suarez in the minors?
exactly.
I never did. Pitchers can make those big adjustments either right after major leagues or right before. A great example is right now, I believe his name's Aaron Ashby for the Brewers.
Yeah,
And I go pretty deep with my minor league prospects. Never really paid much attention to him. He was a back end guy, and now they're saying he could be the number one minor league pitching prospect going into next year. So pitchers are a different breed.
but yeah, I'll agree with you that. Another, I guess, caveat there too might be the catching position. Catchers by nature having to learn to handle a staff and everything usually develop much later. It's not Will Smith is pretty uncommon, being somebody that young, being able to be transforming into a top flight catcher. So, like I said, that's not very common. Normally, it's much later in there. Usually in 29, 30, they start breaking out.
But
I'm thinking,
yeah, you make a good point with catchers, but learning to hit late. If you look at Will Smith, he really learned to hit for average late. He did
yeah,
not hit for average in lower minors. I don't think he hit for high average in AA ball. I think he really busted out as a hitter in AAA, and then went on to the majors. And now he's a really good hitter, not just for power, but all around.
yeah. Mitch Garver is a player that I'm thinking of. He he's like 30 years old, and he I don't know. He kind of started breaking out at 2019, about I guess 28, with 31 home runs, and that's kind of when he busted on the scene. He had a he didn't really have much before that, but like I said, around age 28, he actually showed up, which makes me wonder. I know this we kind of focus on nationally, but Gary Sanchez is another one of those players that I know, like the Yankees and Yankees fans have been hating Gary Sanchez for quite some time. I guess he started off pretty hot, and then he's just kind of flamed out over the recent years. And I think every New York Yankee fan has dreamed up like 20 different trade scenarios involving Gary Sanchez. I think there is um, room for him to, um, get it in gear and actually, get off the interstate. And as far as batting average, I think a trade would be necessary for that to happen. But I don't necessarily think it's too late for him. But like I said, he's one of those examples of um, maybe as he gets older, he'll come into his own. But anyhow, back to a good keeper. Do you have anything else to add to that list?
No, I'm looking for high at bats, younger player, a guy that's done it before in the past, a lot of consistency. I'm looking for hitters over pitchers, probably on a 4-to-1 ratio because I think hitters are more consistent, and pitchers are more up and down. But that It's what makes a good keeper for me. Either 2/3 or 3/4 hitters over pitchers.
So that reminds me. So as far as what a good keeper is, I think every team might be a little different. It depends on your league. It depends on your draft picks and who's available in your draft. And for me, if I'm able to keep, I think I really like keeping 2 or 3 pitchers myself. I think you're more of the hitter standpoint, but if I got 3 good um, pitchers, then I can go into the draft and just concentrate on hitting at least early on and get guys that's going to help me in average. I'm sorry, in home runs and stolen bases, and get those necessary position players then. But this year I may not be able to do it. But like I said, it depends on how you. It's pretty important to play out the draft. So in our draft, I've got the second and third overall picks, and I think I can probably get a pretty good outfielder, one of the top outfielders in the league, and probably somebody like Walker Buehler, which we'll go over in a little bit. So that should factor into your decisions on like who you should keep or what players you should try to um, keep in general. One of the best ways to hopefully your league would have this, but off-season trading. Any good keeper league will have a lot of off-season trading. A lot of times it involves draft picks. Like I said, I ended up with second and third overall picks due to um, some trading at the end of last year and some off-season trading. So I've got 2 of the top 3 draft picks, which I'm pretty excited about. Um, it's good to have a strategy. I think at the beginning of the off season, and you understand where you're at least picking from and what players are going to be in the draft. You may not know every 100%, but you should have a general idea of who some of the best players are going to be in the draft and who you could potentially get in the draft. So like I said, I'm looking at maybe a outfielder, one of the top outfielders, and a top pitcher like Buehler. So I'm looking at okay, I need to complement my team based on those players. I think I still need. I would think I still need to keep at least one pitcher, maybe 2, and then potentially it would be good to have some stolen bases, which I don't have right now, but I need to. I could potentially think about, what kind of off-season trading that I could get with maybe some draft picks or something like that. So I think understanding, kind of doing scenarios where you do figure out who you can get is really key on understanding what you need to do in the off season.
Yeah, I just like to trade.
Yeah, we
So,
both do. I think so.
but I'm looking to either add some draft picks or possibly look at improving my keepers on who I have right now. Is what I'm looking in the off season, and I'm with you. I do like to look and see what's available. I usually try to script out. It's easier on the pitchers, but in a typical, in our league, there's going to be about 15 starting pitchers go in the first 5 rounds. About 30, between 28 and 30 are going to go in the first 10 rounds. So I kind of write down who I think those guys will be, and it gives me a good kind of idea to kind of script out what kind of players I'm going to go for and what rounds. And usually, there's in the past, there's always been good baseball players at first base later in the draft or good players at second base later in the draft. And I'm kind of unique this year in that I have a first baseman and a second baseman. So that's not going to work. So I've always had a strategy in the past of holding on those positions early because I know that there's two or three players that I would like on my team going late at first base or even later at second base, and even at times catcher. Then you can load up on those positions that are a little weaker, like third base or outfield. Outfield is a weak position. First base is actually fairly weak this year. And shortstop is loaded. And if you look at that, that might be the one position to where there's 20 plus players worth drafting at shortstop. It's easily the deepest position. I can't remember shortstop ever being this deep, and first base, there might be only 12 guys that you really want. So you got to take into look at that. In an only league which we play, you do have to look a little bit at scarcity, but at the end of the day, you're just trying to build up stats. So my off-season trading, I'm usually looking to try to, if I can add a couple draft picks, if I can upgrade a keeper or two. But then, it's just fun to trade. What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I think we both are guilty of just trading. Sometimes we just trade to be trading, which is, like I said, you've got a track record of making better trades, in the
Not
better
always.
trades
Not
than
always.
I do.
Maybe
I'll,
so, but
what's
not
that?
always. I said maybe some seasons, but I can go back to 2020 and I didn't make better trades. It cost me probably a chance to maybe gain some ground on you by making some bad trades. But
So that was my problem last year. Is I traded a couple players that I drafted, and I didn't give them long enough to um, actually break out. And I've always been a big, big proponent of selling high and buying low. And I traded Albies last year, and I didn't want to sell him low, and I probably ended up selling him a little low. And Musgrove, I don't know whether I sold him low or not, but he definitely hadn't reached his potential when I did trade him. So those are some pretty bad trades I made last year, and you don't want to fall into that category. So in the off season, obviously, I don't think there's a buy low or buy high part, but will say this: you have to keep an eye out on who's a free agent and who's not a free agent. So Kevin Gausman's a perfect example of this. Had a breakout 2019 and 2020. He's a very high pitcher, and already had to turn down a trade for Gossman. I couldn't do it based on the uncertainty of where he's going to go. I have been known to trade for players that are free agents, just gambling on the fact that they'll sign in the National League. And for the most part, in the past, I've been pretty lucky about that. I remember doing that with Carlos Beltran back in the day when he signed with the Astros. But but I'm only doing that if I get the player at a discount. The offer I had for Gossman wasn't a discount, and I wasn't going to make a deal that significant without some security as far as they're going to be in the National League next year. So especially if you're playing in a only league, you need to make sure that the player is going to be in the league for quite some time. And there's always players that gets traded and they're not a free agent. It's good to keep an ear out to players, teams, rumors and stuff. Understanding who's on the trade block, who's not on the trade block, and make your keeper decisions accordingly.
I got a question for you. So
Sure.
Kevin Gossman is kind of he's hard guy for me to say I like because I watched that season with the Braves and it
Yeah.
was terrible.
I watched the season with the Reds too.
So he's a guy that's ranked high. Would you take Kevin Gossman or Logan Webb?
Ooh. Assuming they're both in the National League and they're let's say they're both playing for the Giants.
I'm with you.
To keep the question marks down to a low. I would probably go Gausman. Yeah, like I said, I do like him. He's like he had a very short and unsuccessful stint with the Reds, but like I said, he's only 30 years old. Might 31 next year. Um, yeah, like I said, 227 strikeouts last year. Um, yeah, like I said, I would definitely take Gausman. I do like Logan Webb, but I think I'll probably take Gausman a little higher.
Okay. The K rate and the innings get you. I mean, I struggle. I guess one of the things I hear about is he's maybe one of only one or two major leaguers that seem to consistently control the split finger pitch. And it makes me wonder if that pitch fails, then he gets hit pretty easily. Where Logan Webb seems to have a few more weapons. What about Luis Castillo and Kevin Gossman?
I don't know. Castillo has been kind of up and down. At least it seems like he's been having rough patches, and I know he's still tremendous talent and everything else. Man, that's a tough one. I would probably have them both in the same tier, meaning like I wouldn't care that much if I got one versus the other. But from if Gausman does play for the Giants next year, he does have a better ballpark and probably a better team all around him. So I might lean Gausman.
Okay.
It would be pretty close.
All right. Let me give you two names that are pretty close together. Just these are the last pitchers I'll talk about. Your guy, Ranger Suarez,
Okay.
or say Anthony DeSclafani, and DeSclafani stays with the Giants.
Oh man, that's a tough one. The problem with Ranger Suarez is he doesn't have a long track record. Um, he's only been in the league for a couple years. He's like this year, he pitched 106 innings, pitched 4 last year. Granted, it was a short season. I'm not sure how much he did in the minors last year. In 2019, he had about 50 innings in the majors. So um, there's not a lot of track record there. I think they both would be in the same tier. I might lean DeSclafani just from I. One thing I was going to talk about in this show was risk, and I still probably will get to that, but I think the risk for DeSclafani is a lot lower than it is for Ranger Suarez.
Really? See, I would have. All right, Ranger Suarez pitched great. He doesn't have a big whiff rate. His ERA as a starting pitcher was great. If you talk about innings, I think he started out like 3 innings, then 5 innings, and jumped to 6, then jumped to 7, and I think he threw a complete game at the end of the year. He had an unreal ramp up from being a 1 and 2 inning guy.
And
handle it well.
That was one of those things where you have to worry about, innings limits, whether or not he's going to have any ill effects of pitching that much. Yeah, like I said, he's largely unproven, and like I'm a bit. Chances are I might end up keeping Suarez just from a lack of better options. But like I said, I do like him, and like I said, he was probably the closest thing to Tom Glavine that we've seen for. Wait a minute, no, John Smoltz that we did see for a while, being like a closer and a starter. But
let me give you a hitter. Your guy, well, they're both your guys, Keto Marte or Michael Conforto.
we're already getting to my team. Let's hold off on that one till we bring up my team.
Let's see. we'll hold off on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Win the deal. That's, at least in my eyes, it's pretty important. So, like, every league is a little different, and it's good to know what your league does. So, and I'm pretty certain, like, a lot of in keeper leagues, it's there's supply and demand. Um, at the beginning of the off season, there's always a lot of demand as far as getting keepers. Everybody wants to get a couple decent keepers at the beginning of the off season, or if you have a bunch of keepers that you can't keep all of, then you're looking to offload them. And usually, like, there's a lot, the prices for keepers are much higher at the beginning of the off season than there are at the end of the off season. But by the end of the off season, you have, you usually get at least in our league, we get a lot of discounts based on, hey, I'm not going to get anything for this guy, because I'm going to throw him back in the draft. If I can get a eighth round pick for this guy, I might as well, because I'm not going to get anything for him if he goes back into the draft. And I know a lot of people are like that. I know, if I've got somebody that I'm not going to keep and that I can get, I can move up 2 or 3 rounds in the draft somewhere, I'll probably go ahead and do it. And to me, that's the best time to make deals. You might not get the um, top of the line keepers, but if you know what you're looking for, and you're, like you said, Rich, you're always building stats. Get those players that can help you win your stat categories. Like I said, to me, like, I'm always kind of keeping an eye on saves. I'm sorry, stolen bases, and if I can, get a couple guys that can get me 20 to 30 stolen bases, like, that would be great. Like, towards the end of the draft, but that's what usually right now. That's kind of where I'm waiting for. And also, if you wait to the end of the off season too, some of those question marks about Gausman and those other free agents get answered, and there's no risk for drafting a Gossman because he may have a 5-year contract with the Giants by then, with any
Yeah,
luck.
you know, I like to deal early, but it's for a different reason than trying to get the most value. To me, it seems like the best value might be January or February, right at the start of spring training. But for me, my reasoning is I want to know what players I've got so that I can start planning my draft and looking where and have a real good idea of my strengths and weaknesses going into the draft with my players. So dealing early helps me come up with that strategy to know, am I going to be looking at pitching early, or can I hold off on pitching to say round 5 or round 6, or do I need to really look at taking in round 1 or 2 a pitcher? And then for me in the season, and this is not always easy to do, is once your team is set and you're ready to go, for me, I think you should hold trading, making any major trades until at least Labor Day. And my reasoning being is good teams get off to slow starts, players get off to slow starts, and then turn it around. And sometimes you can sit there and have a really good team, but you're in 8th place in the middle of May and you start freaking out. And then they flip and you make a bad trade, and then that player flips the switch and goes off and hits 330 for the rest of the year. So to me, it's really about give it a good 9-10 weeks. At that point, that's a really good time to evaluate your team, to know if maybe you overestimated your players, or maybe you're better than you thought you were, or maybe you're a whole lot worse than you thought you are. And then you have a really good idea of when to deal and also who to deal with. Where are the opportunities at? Are there some teams that are already looking for next year that maybe you can get a player to help you this year? So to me, that's an important date, is when to start making big deals. That doesn't mean I wouldn't take a small deal earlier, but I'm not looking to make a major deal until right around Labor Day. I definitely believe you should wait to Labor Day. And you kind of was saying that you didn't agree. So,
Well, no. I said in the off season, I prefer to wait.
oh no,
Um,
I
in
get that.
probably if I can wait till I don't know late January, February to make some deals like in the off season. That's what I prefer to do. Like I said, if you, especially if you come up on the deadline to announce your keepers. If you come up on that deadline and people are say, well, I can either trade this guy and get like an eighth round pick, or I can throw him back in the draft. Some people will just say, I'm gonna throw him back in the draft, which is fine. But a good chunk of people will say, well, I might as well get something for him.
No, I think you can get some back end keepers that way, especially if you kind of low on keepers or don't have a lot of good ones. I think waiting is a good strategy.
Yeah, but like I said, you have to be willing to be flexible with your keepers.
And you got to be
Uh,
willing to wait too.
yeah.
That's difficult for me to do, but yeah, I think that's a good strategy.
So let's go ahead and start. Look at my team here. We've mentioned so many times. We get to keep 5 keepers plus minor league players. So minor leagues are not in the discussion here. Which my minor league keepers, I've got Josiah Gray. Which if your league has minor leaguers, if you can get some minor leaguers that are major league ready or going to start or be in the majors, this year, that is a great way to kind of expand your rosters or your keepers. So, Josiah Gray, barring injury or some unforetold, thing happening, he should be in the starting rotation April 1st. So, in a way, with him being in my minors, I have a 6th keeper here. So I'm pretty excited about that. So, with that being said, here's India, Brian Hayes, Brendan Rogers, Dilla Carlson, Michael Conforto, Marte, Sanchez, Lux, uh, Jesus Luzardo, Ranger Suarez, Soroka, and Pablo Lopez. Just, I could probably throw out Soroka and Luzardo. No, there's probably zero chance of me keeping them. I think everybody else Lux might be probably a guy that I throw back into, but I could see scenarios where the Dodgers do not bring back Seager nor Taylor, and Lux might be, given like the second base job with nobody looking over his shoulder. So like, there's a scenario where Lux is a good keeper, but I'm not necessarily banking on that right now.
I I think Sager's gone. I don't see any scenario the Dodgers keep him unless he's willing to take a short term contract.
Yeah.
Um, and I do believe the Dodgers believe in Lux a lot. If you watch the series with the Braves, he was out there every game. I can't. He was out there. He was involved. He was a big part of it for a guy that didn't have a great season. Um, growth is not linear; it goes up and down. I really believe Gavin Lux has a lot of potential. For me, who are your top? If you're taking 2 guys, I'm just wanting to know which 2 guys do you keep, or which 3 guys out of this bunch are you like? These are my guys.
I would probably say the most obvious choices for me to keep would be Dilla Carlson. I know we're both really high on him. I think he has a very, very bright future, and he's hitting in the middle of that Cardinals lineup. I really like him. Jonathan Indy is going to win the Rookie of the Year, and neither one of us like to keep second baseman, but um, it's kind of hard to not keep the Rookie of the Year. I would love to be able to keep Brian Hayes, but he didn't have a very good season. Um, Depending on what happens with Trevor Story, we both think that Story won't be back in Colorado. If that's the case and Brendan Rodgers stays healthy, having the Colorado starting shortstop is probably a really good keeper. So those three guys would be really hard to not keep from my team. And like I think I have to keep a pitcher or two. And I mentioned this earlier that with keepers and also players in general, when you're drafting them, you have to really evaluate them based on risk. What is the risk of them, not performing up to what they're supposed to? What are the risk of them getting hurt or just not performing what they're supposed to do? And I think there's a lot of risk with Suarez. Pablo Lopez was hurt, but I think there's probably lower risk with Lopez. So I probably would lean into keeping Lopez at the moment. He has a much longer track record. Suarez is great. He was great last year. I really like Keto Marte because he makes really hard contact often. He has one of the highest batted ball exit velocities in the league. And he has a really high batting average too. But Conforto had a bad 2020, 2021, but he's a consistent performer. He's a free agent, so he could stay or he could go. And I really like Jesus Sanchez. He's a guy that I think has a really bright future as well. And we talked about Gavin Lux. So if I had to make the decision right now, I would probably take that Lopez and I'd probably flip a coin. It'd probably be one of Conforto, Marte, or Sanchez. Might even flip a coin. Who knows? I don't know. Tell me who I should take or why I should take.
Okay. For me, I think your strategy here is you have a lot of good young players. I'm not sure they're all keepers yet, but they're close. My strategy would be to wait to make any big trades, wait to the very end and try to get those bargains. Don't give up any of your top picks. Unless you can take a second or third round pick and get, a pitcher that you like or another player that that you feel really consistent, good about. I really like Dilla Carlson. I don't think that's a bad play. I'm with you on Jonathan India. I would wait, but I would probably lean Michael Conforto if he signs with the NL and he's healthy going into spring training. Our draft is not until the 20th. I would like Sanchez, but I just don't. I think Michael Conforto is more of a sure thing. He's going to bat in the 3, 4, 5 position. You know what you're getting. If you look at like the last 6 weeks of the season, he hit like 260 with probably half his home runs during that time period. So shoulder injuries are kind of tricky, but he's a guy that's been in the top 50 2 to 3 times. Keto Marte, if you prorate his stats and give him 550, 600 at bats, he's a no-brain keeper, but I would look at possibly trying to trade him and even getting more draft value. So for me, I definitely I can see your argument on Pablo Lopez. I think the ceiling might be higher with him than Ranger Suarez. But I would be looking at keeping 2 to 3 guys and maybe looking to give like an 8th and a 7th to try to get better keepers on your 4th and 5th.
Okay, so if I kept 3 players off of this team, which 3 would you keep?
I changed my mind a lot during the off season.
I know I do too.
But I would lean Jonathan India and Dilla Carlson for sure. And then the third one would come down to me between Cabron Hayes, Michael Conforto, and probably Pablo Lopez.
Yeah. I can see that. I know you. I know you're really big on Conforto, and to be honest with you, I'm pretty high on him as well. But like I say, there's a chance, he might not sign back with the Mets, so you may not even be an option to me.
And you're okay with that. The other option is you just hang on to him and possibly if he signs with the team, he gets hyped a little bit and you can use him as trade bait.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now,
but
if he signed with somebody like San Diego or San Francisco, that might actually increase his. I don't know about San Francisco. Um, if he signed with one of the California teams, it might increase his value a little bit.
the Rockies need an outfielder. I don't
Oh
know.
God, that would that would put it through the moon there.
They need an outfielder. I mean, there's other team. Yeah, I mean, he could sign back where he's at for on a 1-year contract. Um, you could even make an argument. I mean, you can make a really solid argument for Gavin Lux, but my thought on Gavin Lux is that he's somebody that's probably going to drop in the draft, and you could probably take him in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah.
And the only thing that concerns me about Sanchez at all might be the batting average a little bit. The power's real, and he looks real, and he's still young. He's a really good player, but I would just go for more of the sure thing, and I would hold on. I would not trade any of my. I don't know how many firsts, and you got 3 firsts, 2 seconds. Is that right?
Yeah, I've only got 1 second,
And
two
how many
second.
thirds? You got 3
Oh,
firsts.
you mean draft picks? I've got
Draft.
2 first, and I got 2 seconds. I got a third, I believe.
I would not trade my first round picks or my second round picks.
I've got 2 first, 2 seconds, a third, fourth, fifth, sixth. I don't really. I got 2 sevens.
Yeah. I would not. I would use maybe one of my sevenths to pick up a player, and maybe you might even steal somebody in the 10th. Giving up a 10th round draft pick, and
Yeah.
I would keep all that draft capital because you can almost plan out who you're picking. You've got four solid players as long as you keep the right players.
So I'll be looking at taking either Juan Soto or Cunha, plus a Bueller or the next best player that would potentially come over.
I think it's Bueller unless there's somebody comes from the American League.
I still got hopes that um, Jose Ramirez comes over, but we'll see.
But it would be really hard. I mean, if you just think about it, Bueller is probably the number 1 pitcher off the board, unless you want to say Corbin Burns or Brandon Woodruff. I would probably go Bueller. What would you go?
I don't think Corbin Burns isn't going to be in the draft. I don't think.
No, but if you were just
Yeah.
out National League, everybody's available. Who's the number
Oh,
1 pitcher?
I think in long term, Walker Bueller. There's a case to be made with Walker Bueller because he's still really young. You
got him for 4 years.
got him for 4 years.
Bueller would be a hard person to pass up. He plays on a great team.
Yeah.
He would be a really hard. I'm with you. I like pitching. I mean, I like hitting better early in the draft, but it would be hard to pass him up. And then you're getting a top 4 player. You're getting a top 4 player, and then they'll only with either Acuna or Soto. I mean, the only 2 players I can think that would even possibly top them are Tatis and Trey Turner, maybe.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, that's going to give you a bang. And and you've got Jonathan India, who does give you some speed and gives you all around, that he's going to score runs. Are they batting Jonathan India first toward the end of the year?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. He was batting either first or second, so he was setting the table.
So he only had 532 at bats because didn't he kind of share some playing time early in the year?
Yeah, he didn't start off. They started off with Moustakas playing second, and I'm sorry. No, actually, they did. They started off with India playing second. They had Moustakas at third, Suarez at short, and then Farmer was sliding. He didn't have an everyday job that he was kind of platooning there early on, but he pretty much grabbed the job and held on to it all year. I was pretty surprised about that. I figured he would kind of peter out there and um, eventually give it up, but he he did dip down in late July, early August, but he picked it right back up at the end of the year. So he was able to, you know,
Yeah, if I remember right, he got hot, then kind of started slowing down, and then he really picked it up. I
yeah,
mean, you got to look at him as a guy that could match or improve next year. The only thing you really have a question mark is can he hit 21 home runs, but he can probably improve his counting stats and improve his batting average. And then you're looking at Dilla Carlson, who we both agree that thinks going to be a better player next year.
yeah.
Um, so you got two really solid picks. The only for me that would be my strategy, unless I could get somebody that I really want now. I would not want to trade my first or seconds, because think about all the pitchers that are going to be in that second
Yeah.
round.
I agree, totally agree. Like there's gonna be some good pitchers in the draft. Jack Flaherty is gonna be in the draft. Luis Castillo is gonna be in the draft. Um,
Right as of right now, you got Walker Buehler, Luis Castillo, Charlie Morton, Jack Flaherty, Zach Gallen, and I have Blake Snell being in the draft. Do you think he'll be a keeper?
it's questionable. Brandon Woodruff, like he's probably one of the players that I'm gonna target. But I I think Woodruff gets kept, but I there's a chance he could be in the draft too.
I would be shocked if Woodruff is in the draft.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would be shocked. So you're leaning more toward giving like a second up and going to get Woodruff.
Oh no, not a second. I'm in your boat. Like I'm not trading a first or a second round pick, for pretty much anyone. There's too much value there. Even my third is going to be a high third. So yeah, five. I've got 5 picks in the first 22. I got
Yeah,
5 picks in the first 22. So like I said, I'll
there are going to
good
be some
start.
great players in that. There's going to be keepers. I mean, Walker Bueller, Luis Castillo, Charlie Morton, Zach Flaherty, Zach Gallen, Blake Snell. I had Pablo Lopez, but you're going to keep him. Marcus Stroman, Sonny Gray, maybe Tyler Mahle, Ian Anderson. They're all going to be pitchers that will be available.
You think Ian Anderson too?
I do. Yeah, I do think he'll be available. Because I have about 19 pitchers that are going to be kept, and then 31 hitters, and then you're going to have Will Smith possibly out there as well, unless he gets traded or unless I end up keeping.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of good players early in the draft, so I would strongly consider keeping those. One player I would look at, and I think it's good that you're open to keep, not deciding who you're going to keep totally right now. If Ke'Bryan Hayes is healthy, you can make a good argument for keeping Ke'Bryan Hayes.
Oh, I absolutely. Um,
He was
I
injured. He had a wrist injury all year. He didn't play a full year. He still got you 9 bags, and you just prorated stats and give him a little better power, and he's probably 15 home runs and 13 to 15 stolen bases.
yeah.
With a better average than he posted. And third base is weak.
Yeah,
So
like I said, I can absolutely see me keeping him as well. It's just I've got a lot of I've got a lot of the middle tier um, players to choose from, and I to be honest with you, like unless I can get like some super great talent for not a lot, I probably at the most will only trade for one keeper because I like you brought up like Hayes, like I really it would be great to keep him, but like I said, there's just too many people on my. I've got a lot of sleeper type players on my team, which is not a great thing to be keep. Sleepers are great for drafting them in the draft, but when you're keeping them, it's the value's a little less. So that's kind of my issue there.
Yeah, I'm with you. The only thing I know you were talking about speed is I would look at adding a player that has power.
Yeah,
30 home run guys, they give you so much value when you look at, all the categories they fill up, and there are out there. I mean, there's going to be a Dansby Swanson possibly. He had good power. I know you're not a big Dansby fan.
you're trying to market your players. Is that what you're trying
CJ
to do?
Cron is going to be out there, and I think he's a 30 home run guy.
Who's that?
CJ Cron.
Oh yeah, you're marketing your guys.
I am marketing my guys, but
I don't
I
blame
mean,
you.
there are other guys. I would just be, if you're looking for another keeper, I would maybe lean power. Because 100 steals, would that have gotten you second place this year or third place in stolen bases? I can't remember, but I led the league by a lot, and I only had like 130.
100 steals would have gotten me third place.
Yeah. So you got Jonathan India is going to give you 12. If you're keeping Dilla Carlson, he was a better runner. I got to believe that he's going to run a little bit more.
So does it change your mind knowing that Sanchez only had 227 at bats and got 14 home runs in those? So if you extended it out to a full season, if you played a full season, he'd have over 30 home runs. Would that
Yeah,
change your mind on him at all?
I'll tell you my biggest worry.
Okay.
You see those 78 Ks over 227 innings?
Yeah, I get you.
That's 156 Ks over 450 at bats. You give him another 100 at bats on top of that, and he's pushing 200 Ks. And
Yes, he is.
that would be hard. That's my biggest worry. That, and he got 0 stolen bases. But
Would it be an op? Would there be? Would he have the risk of falling into becoming a platoon player?
I don't see it. Do you see it? I mean, I don't see it this year.
No, his splits are pretty even as far as being a left hand or as far as average goes. He does bat left-handed, but yeah, he definitely does have much more power hitting from the right side than he does the left side. Um, I'm sorry. He has much more power against right-handed pitching than he does left-handed pitching. But he actually has a higher batting average against lefties. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I think his potential is too much, and Miami's don't really have a ton of
I think he's going to start all year.
talent. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I see him getting at least 25 home runs, and probably I could see him actually pushing 30 home runs if he stays healthy.
If he plays all year, but I could also see him, and maybe it's okay because Adam Duvall does it, but I can see him hitting 220.
Ooh,
I can see him hitting that low. But
that'll hurt.
yeah. And also, the other thing you got to think about is a lot of these players, I think they're going to go. Which ones do you think will go in the second round, and which ones will fall to the third and fourth and fifth? That's the question.
Yeah,
Because if they're going to fall to third and fourth and fifth, you can just pick them there.
yeah, exactly.
Like, Brendan Rogers, I think he has a chance to fall, not because he's not a good player, but because everybody's going to have a shortstop before his name gets drafted.
Yeah. I know Kello Marte was a third round draft pick last year. I don't know whether much has changed from that. I can still see him being a third rounder. And granted,
Yeah.
it depends. I see a lot of these players being like third, fourth round.
Early picks, but yeah, I'm with you. 335, something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, but I would look at adding one more guy, and you could
Yeah.
almost, you would have your, if you kept Lopez, you're going to have Bueller, and then you're going to have at least, if you take one of the second rounds and make it a pitcher, that'd be your three.
Yeah, I think you're right there. If I could add a Bueller would help me definitely with K's, and that's something I need. I do need home runs, and I think Soto or Acuna will help that, but I think I still need another 30 home run bat.
Yeah, but
Can Conforto do that? I don't know.
I don't know either. It'd be a guy I'd wait and see, and what team he goes to, and who he stays with, and how he looks, and because he has some injury concerns too, a little bit.
Yeah, he did.
So, but yeah, you got a fun team though.
Yeah, like I said, that's a bad thing about having a team, a bunch of your guys to keep. You, it's always a struggle trying to decide which of your guys are you're going to keep. But you're trying. You're definitely swaying me on Brian Hayes. Um, I've always been big on him, and yeah, it'd be hard pressed to let him go to another team. So maybe you're right. So anyhow, this is kind of like my team and like kind of the thought processes that I'm going through. Um, sure that you're uh, have similar type of issues that you're dealing with. Um, don't, try not to let your guys be kind of a factor for anything. Obviously, there's players that you like more than others. Like I said, as you can see, my team it's full of potential. There's not a lot of older guys on here that's towards the end of their career or having 30, 31, 32. Um, most all of these guys have much higher potential. Um, so, like I said, there's a lot of decisions there. You have to make sure get somebody with stolen bases, home runs. Um, make sure you get your statting category. And we've already talked about how the draft is going to work out and how that'll help me decide how my team is going to look. And that's kind of the process you have to go through when you uh, decide your keepers and see who you're getting. And like I said, if I could end up getting maybe a Brandon Woodruff for like an eighth round or seventh round or even a sixth round pick, that would definitely help my team cement itself here. So that's probably what I'm going to have to do. Like I say, I probably won't get two keepers just because of all the players that I want to keep. So we'll kind of go from there. If you guys like what you see, if you have any questions, if fantasy questions or any such, email us at mvp@fantasyknuckleballers.com. Check out we don't have our site updated quite yet, but we are working on rankings and whatnot. You can check it out at fantasyknuckleballers.com and follow us on Twitter at fknuckleballers. Thanks to everyone for watching, and we'll be back again. Thanks.
Thanks.